All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to She Means Business. This is a celebration of female entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurship right here in the middle of this brand new KLGCC Mall, brought to you by Sinar Daily, Nabi Property, and Girls for Girls Malaysia. My name is Filza Zulkifli. I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. I'm the Deputy Country Lead for Girls Malaysia. And it's such a pleasure for me to be moderating today's panel featuring two amazing female entrepreneurs who have built successful businesses that you can all experience right here in this very mall after this. So before we dive right in, I just want to share a statistic that will set the stage a little bit for this discussion. Research from BCG, or Boston Consulting Group, has shown that female or women-led startups generate 10% higher cumulative revenue in the last 5 years. Let me say that again. Women-led startups globally have generated over 10% higher cumulative revenue in the last 5 years. And in Malaysia alone, there's a recent study that also showed that over 21% of SMEs in Malaysia are currently women-led. Now, despite all this proven track record and amazing statistics, women entrepreneurs still face significant unique challenges. That includes funding. So we see that globally, less than 3% of female-led businesses earn global VC funding, which is very, very jarring. And there's also a lot more women as compared to men who have a fear of failure when it comes to starting a business. So today we're here to explore not just these challenges and these statistics, but also the insights, the breakthroughs, and of course success stories from these two amazing entrepreneurs who have not only overcome these challenges, but have taken these challenges and turned them into opportunities. So let me introduce you to our inspiring panelists. First, we have Eva Woon right here. She is the founder of Inari Jewellery. Inari and Eva through Inari. Give a round of applause here. So Eva, through Inari, has created a brand with timeless designs and amazing craftsmanship with her brand here. I would just like to point that her store or the outlet, the first, correct me if I'm wrong, first flagship outlet for Inari Jewellery is here in KLGCC Mall. So you can have a good look after this session today. I would just like to give Eva a minute or two to just introduce yourself and a bit about Inari.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So hi everyone, my name is Eva and I am the founder and creative director of Inari Jewellery. So we are a fine jewelry brand that focus on bringing light to artisanal craftsmanship. So I think when I first started this, I actually just came back from overseas. I've lived overseas for many years. And when I came back, I realized that there are probably a lot of brands that are either fast fashion or the traditional brands that you see. So I wanted to bring in more light into artisanal craftsmanship in the things that you wear daily and also provide better access to luxury for the mass. So yeah, that's how I started Inari Jewellery 3.5 years ago. I spent 9 years as a consultant. Traveling around London, Singapore, Thailand, and finally back in KL with pursuing my dream with Inari.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Eva. I am sure it has been an amazing and eventful 3.5 years so far, and it's only just gonna get better and better moving forward. Now, before we dive into the questions, I'd also like to introduce you to our another inspiring panelist. We have Mardhiah Latiff up here. Can we give a round of applause for Mardhiah? Mardhiah is the founder of Lax and Lay Retreat. So most of you or many of you may have known or may have been customers to her business here. So Lax Retreat is a wellness sanctuary and it offers a very good respite amidst our busy world and time today. So I just like to also point out that Lax will be opening its latest or newest outlet here is in KLGCC Mall itself. So it's very exciting to see that. Mardhiah, could you please share a little bit more about yourself and Lax and Lay?
Thank you so much, Filza, for the introduction. Okay, so we started Lax Retreat back in 2021 at the height of the pandemic. Which is a very controversial decision to make. But it worked out for us, thankfully. And we've since expanded into another brand called Lay, which is championing Malaysian wellness. So we call it a Malaysian wellness concept because we think that Malaysian wellness is not well represented enough in retail. So you see a lot of Thai wellness, but there's nothing on Malaysian wellness. So we really want to bring forth Malaysian heritage and identity through Lay, and then with Lex is female only. Also, there's no female only wellness brand at retail as well. So when I say at retail, it's malls. So to be able to offer this to women and provide a safe space for women has been such a privilege. Actually, across Lex and Lay, 85% of the revenue and the traffic comes from women. The industry is very woman dominated. So even if you have husbands come, it's because of the wives. So yeah, I mean, we managed to fill that gap, and we're just getting started. So we have to date 3 outlets, and this is our 4th one. So 2 Lex and 2 Lay, and hopefully many more. I think that I'm very excited to share. I think people talk about, you always know about stories when people are very successful, but then you don't really know, how they got there. It's always in hindsight. It's always in retrospect. When it was really hard for us, but they can say that because they've already been there, right? They're already there. So, whereas we are in the thick of things, we are in the trenches right now. We're growing and fixing things, and entrepreneurship is akin to jumping off an aeroplane and assembling your parachute along the way. So there's a lot of moving parts to it, and you have to make sure that you make more good decisions than bad, I guess, at the end of the day. So I'm very excited to share this stage, and I hope we can share a lot of stories.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mardhiah. I like the very interesting analogy that you used with regards to entrepreneurship and how it is similar to jumping off an aeroplane and assembling your own parachute. I think that's one very fitting metaphor analogy to be used here. Now, what strikes me most about both of your businesses really is that not only are they commercially successful, but I can tell, or everyone in the audience can tell really, that they're also deeply personal expressions of your visions and your values and your interests, right? And this perfectly sets us up for our first question, which touches a little bit on the barriers, one of the top barriers that women face when it comes to entrepreneurship. Now, there's another study that shows that amongst all of the data that they've done in the UK and even in Malaysia, 31% of women that they've interviewed cited fear of failure as the #1 reason to not starting a business, as compared to 21% of men. Now, in more recent or a more wider Southeast Asian lens, the number is actually much higher. We have 64% of women who cite fear of failure as their #1 reason for not starting a business, as opposed to 53% of men. So I'm just curious, maybe we can start with Eva first. How did you, what was the idea, or what was the point where you thought to turn this idea and this passion of yours into a real business? And did you face any such fears as well? And if you did, how did you push past them to make it happen no matter what?
So a lot of people don't know this, but Inari is actually my 3rd jewelry business. So people are always like, overnight success is not overnight. People always say, oh my God, have you heard of this brand? And I'm like, yeah, they have been around for X amount of years, right? 10 years, 20 years. But a lot of people only see what they see on social media, and they were like, oh my God, this brand has an overnight success. But as to what you were saying earlier, right? You don't see the struggle that people go through. So for me, Inari is actually my 3rd jewelry business. I was running 2 other beforehand, and I was doing it as a part-time while I was a full-time consultant. And it actually took me about a whole year of therapy to really talk through the fear of failure. What if, right? Because in front of you, there is a very clear pathway. You know what you need to do, the KPIs you need to hit in order to get the next promotion. And you will know the next bracket of salary that you're getting. And you get to a certain point in life whereby, you have commitments, you have goals, and suddenly your identity that people around you know you as makes it really, really hard for you to say, okay, I'm going to drop everything and I'm going to go start a business. Because there's nothing that is promised, when you start a business. Today, it might be successful. Tomorrow, you might be thrown a problem that you just have to solve, right? So to have to go through that mental readiness to say, okay, I'm going to take that risk. It took me about a whole year and a lot of therapy session and crying. But I also knew that it came to a point where, if I don't give this a go, I know that I would have disappointed myself, right? I said, sure, I could have been a partner in a consulting firm. I could have been very comfortable financially. But then I would look back in my life when I'm 60 or when I'm 70, and I would be like, you should have done that. So I told myself, hey, take 2 years, go give it a go. What's there to lose? But to be fair, it was a very hard transition mentally to get there. And of course, a lot of support from people around you. I have to be honest, right? Not everyone is lucky enough to have a support system that can be there for you and that can say that, go, pursue your passion, give it a go. Anything financially or anything else, don't worry about it. Like, I recognize that, and I know that not everyone have that ability, but it's tough, It's just a lot of mental and hard work. When I say hard, it's not, of course, it's hard work, but it's also your emotional readiness, I'd say.
Heart work.
Yes, correct. That's right. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I really appreciate you being very candid and honest about your starting point or that struggle to some extent of starting what is your third business now. Thanks for sharing that a lot, and I'm sure a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs or even experienced entrepreneurs can resonate who are watching this today. Mardhiah, we're just curious as well to learn how you started Lax and Lay as well, and similarly, were there similar fears that you had, and if there were, what did you do to push past them?
Okay, so I think in entrepreneurship, I guess I've always held on to what Steve Jobs said: is stay hungry and stay foolish. Because no matter how much you think you know about something, you don't. You just have to do it. You learn as you go. I just don't believe in preparing too much. I mean, of course, it's good to have preparation. But I think that in business, you just have to start, You just have the courage to start and build along the way. Of course, I think in 2025 it's very different. So we started in 2021, where I think a lot of things were very different in 2021. The coffee industry was very different in 2021. The number one player was still Starbucks, right? You don't have Luckin, you don't have Zeus. Zeus was around, but not at the scale of what it is now. The barrier to entry in business in 2025 is a lot higher compared to 2021. So although we started during the pandemic, we were very lucky that we started at a time when people were very risk averse. People weren't ready to take on a lot of risks. So we could negotiate better, We're a brick and mortar business, so we had to negotiate our rental and things like that. So in a lot of ways, it helped us, to have a bit of what's the right word for it? What's the PC word for it? To have the balls, I guess, to do it, the guts to do it.
The guts, the courage.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's not really what I said was very passé as well, because I think to choose a term that is more gender neutral is very important also, But anyway, so yeah, it's there's a lot of also I feel when it comes to our business, the gaps were clearer. I guess it depends. If you want to start, a mobile phone company, then of course, you have to be cautious and you can't just try and build as you go. But with us, because the players at the time were the incumbents, even now, they have been around 20, 15 years. So there's a lot of room for us to play. There's a lot of room for us to make an impression, to gain that virality, to market and brand ourselves in a very different way. So I guess it depends on the industry. At the end of the day, I think the best customer is yourself. So when we built the business, we built it for us. So we are the customer. So we know that there's a lot of people who resonate. I think you can say the same. Like this, yeah. I mean, the best is to build something that is missing in your life. You know, you wish that something like this is around, but it's not, and then like you want to create something. More likely, somebody out there will resonate with that. You're not alone in that pain point, but of course, you need to validate it. So we validated it. So before we signed a leasing agreement or anything, we sold our membership for 19 ringgit, and we sold 200 ringgit, 200 units of it. So without having a shop, just a website. But this is 2021. I don't know, but like 2025, I think people are a bit like, whoa, like the consumer behavior has changed a lot. So we were very lucky. Luck is also timing at the end of the day. So I guess you have to know where you are. You have to know your industry. You have to know how much room you have to play. That you can in terms of risk. So we're very lucky that we could get away with that. So.
But also the readiness to take action when the luck arrives, right? Because people always say there's two things to it. Luck might come your way, but if you're not ready to take it, then it's not yours. So it's also both. Definitely your hard work as well.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things. Like I said, like you have to be right more than you are wrong. As long as there's a net right and a net positive, you should be okay. Because you're bound to make mistakes.
That's actually a very, very good point to make as well. And I think both of you had really, really strong points when it comes to just starting with good conviction, yes, but also starting with that good idea and that good resonance of what do I want as a consumer and what do I want to see as a consumer and what would I put my money on in as a consumer. I think that's a very, very good point for a lot of inspiring entrepreneurs out there as well today, despite the highly competitive market versus what it was 3.5 or 4 years ago. Now, I just want to touch a little bit. I know you mentioned a little bit about how do you stay, I guess, competitive, right, in today's market. But before we go into that, just staying in that 2021, 2022 timeline here. Again, we heard earlier that less than 3%, specifically 2.3% of female-led businesses have received VC funding globally. We know that this is a big and a unique challenge for a lot of female entrepreneurs. So I think we're just curious to hear as well, how did you both, I guess, first support or fund your businesses in the earlier days? And were there any creative ways that you had to use to sustain, knowing that the VC funding for women especially is highly competitive? Maybe Mardhiah can just share a little bit more as well.
Okay, so I guess if you're a first-time entrepreneur and you're new at entrepreneurship and business, you have no choice but to raise your own funds, right? So it's the 3 Fs: friends, family, and fairies. So fairies are people who are kind enough to, invest in you. But it's very difficult and it's very rare that a first-time founder can raise money. So I think what comes with experience and being second, third-time founders is the ability to raise capital. So actually in business, you're as good as your ability to raise capital, technically, because you need enough cash flow, you need enough runway. So unfortunately, it wasn't the case for us. We had to fork our own savings and, our parents' savings and things like that to create a proof of concept. And especially in an industry where the capital expenditure is very, very high, it's a risk that you have to take. That's why we validated the concept. We knew that okay, this is enough traction, and we acted on it, and so I guess also to comment on the thing that you said about access to venture capital, I believe strongly that women entrepreneurs are just not getting a seat at the table. Also, I think that in terms of what we share with each other as entrepreneurs, and just in general how women speak to each other, there's a bit of a wall. I think I've seen men talk to each other about their businesses and they're very upfront about it. They're like, oh yeah, I did this much, my margin's this much. But for women, it's still very they're not comfortable disclosing anything. And so I think there needs to be a shift in how we talk to each other as well as women. It needs to happen bottom up and top down. So it's like bottom up meaning like you have to make sure that you have open conversations with other female entrepreneurs. If you've raised money, you gotta share it with other entrepreneurs also, female entrepreneurs especially. And top down, obviously also like big VCs and funds have to, give equity to female businesses, right? So like have separate funds that focuses on female-led businesses and things like that. So there needs to be a lot of reform happening, top down and bottom up. So, but I still think that like there's a lot of things you can do. You do have a lot of agency, and it starts with yourself also in how you have that conversation with other women and how to kind of support them, and also you yourself have to be open to receiving whatever is coming, and like any tips or any criticisms and things like that. So I mean, like, yeah, it's not the most flattering thing to say, right? I mean, but I do think that like it's a shift that needs to happen. I don't know if you experience the same in your circles or your observation.
I think generally females want to make sure that your idea is solid and you have a good track record to show before you go and raise funds. I think it's very normal in our nature. But I also want to make a point, right, around how it's not just about female gender inequality. Of course, there might be a level of that involved, but I also think generally maybe females tend to skew towards businesses that are more maybe like service related or traditional product related, because I think that is what, if you look at what VC funds are actually funding, right? Now it's AI. Back in the days, it's big tech, right? So generally, I think majority of females tend to go towards like exactly what you were saying, what's missing in my life, the services, the products that I need, and we tend to go into that. But then for VC funding, they are technically looking at what can like 100x, 500x my investment.
It's very revenue profit driven versus
right.
a traditional service
Correct.
setting. Yeah.
Which is also why, the numbers then skew towards, hey, actually more male are getting funded compared to females, right? So I think there's definitely that industry factor and the kind of like work that we're putting out there, the business that we start, the nature of the business that we start. Sure, if I were to start an AI company and I'm going to go pitch, chances of me as a female getting funding would probably be a lot higher than if I were to start a jewelry brand, right? Because I know for a fact my business is not VC attractive at all, right? Because first, high capital you need to put in, and I'm like not investing into the cheapest of material, right? Because we have to invest in gold, we have to invest in semi-precious precious stones, and like you have to have a lot of capital. And with jewelry, I mean, this is our very first retail store. We took 3.5 years to get here. To a lot of people, maybe it's too like really fast. To some people, maybe it's a bit slow. But similar to you, like I also use my own savings at first. I think there is also this notion of like I need to raise fund in order to build a business and in order to be successful. I don't think that's true. You always want to start off small first. Try and improve your concept, right? Like when we started, I used my savings. I was lucky enough to have worked overseas. So I had some savings. Sure, people around you will be like, oh, did her parents fund her? Where did she get her money from? Right? And everyone will have their own opinion. But for me, it doesn't matter. The noise doesn't really quite matter. Just focus on what you do, right? So we started off with, I started off with my own funding too. All the amounts of savings that I've had from my work. And I actually started off online. Friends, and then we started going to pop-ups. And I remember my very first pop-up, someone was telling me like, oh, I think your price point is too high because there will be jewelry store next to you that's selling at 30 ringgit, at 50 ringgit, and then there's our stuff that's like 150 and above, right? And that's where a lot of education in the material and the artisan craftsmanship comes in. But you have to take a chance, right? And based off of the feedback that you get, from our customers, from real people buying your stuff, similar to what you did, right? People paid before you actually even had a store. And then you know, okay, you have got something that you can start working on, and you start building proof points, right? As you make money, even though it's a small scale, you receive more money, you reinvest into the business, and you grow that way. I think too often, people tend to say, I need to raise money in order to start something. I don't think that's true. I think that's just an excuse. I mean, again, it depends on what kind of business you're starting, of course. So I'm talking from a product perspective. I think there are a lot of minimum viable product that you can start off with. We didn't start doing fine jewelry until we opened a store here, right? I used to pack, unpack, carry everything myself, right? I still scrub the floor myself, because what the mindset is, you need to be willing to work hard, and you need to be resourceful in the way that you want to grow your business. And that is where, like you were saying, building from the heart is very important, like something you need. Yeah.
That's really, really strong points from both of you. I really, really like how you mentioned that you have to be resourceful, to put it very, very frank. So no matter, even if I think, just to jump on your point of, no matter your industry, whether you are in a traditional industry or even in an AI tech industry where there are more chances of being funded by VCs, you still need to have that resourceful mindset and identity, because you'd never know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day with the market, with anything that's going on in your market or beyond that will affect your business no matter what. And to your point of you mentioning why there's also a barrier for a lot of women to get support financially or beyond, due to the fact that there's this supposedly wall between founders. That's actually a very, very resonant point, where I think we can all agree that a lot of times we were raised as women that the table is there's a very, very limited seat at the table or on the table. So I think what we want to also break that mindset of today is, if the table is already full, we are not here to shun anyone from sitting at the table. We're here to just add more chairs to the table. Maybe build a longer table, maybe build a longer bench. And then that's where, as women founders, as female founders, we can all collaborate and work together and grow together as well. So really, really great points, both of you. Then I'd just like to touch back and circle back on, since both of you have started your businesses for at least 3.5, 4 years, since about after COVID times. As you've mentioned earlier, when you started at pop-ups, there were people comparing price points between Inari and competitors. Even with Flags, I'm sure you started with a 19 ringgit membership, but has since, of course, had to increase pricing with all the different offerings and services that you have today. How do you then balance staying true to your vision, staying true to what you believe in as a founder, as an entrepreneur, versus maybe adapting to something that feels commercially safer? So was there ever a time where you had to find a balance between, okay, this is what I believe in as a founder, I believe in our price point, I believe in our vision and our aesthetic and everything that we stand for, but also having to kind of balance that with what's more marketable, what's more viable to, or palatable to the market out there? Maybe Eva, if you'd like to take this on first.
When you start a business, you would realize that suddenly everyone want to give you unsolicited advice. I don't know if you experience it. Suddenly you'll get like a DM, hey, have you seen this jewelry? What they're doing? Oh, by the way, I think you should do this. Oh, your price point is too high. I would not pay this amount, right? Suddenly everyone is an expert in your business. But ultimately, you know that you know your business the best. You know why you started it, what's the intention behind it. I think you gotta follow your heart, right? I don't know if a male founder would say that, but I believe in like following my heart. Of course, the numbers you need to run, you need to make sure it's, you know, it's viable, because ultimately it's profit minus revenue minus cost equals profit, right? And if your profit is a loss, how are you gonna pay your team? How are you gonna sustain your vision, right? So you have to balance practicality of like running a business and your passion and what you believe in. I think when I first started, I was very affected by people sending me things. And I know it comes from a good place, right? I know they care, I know they're excited, I know, you know, that they want the best for me. But what they don't know is that sometimes all of these comments just make you question yourself a lot. Am I doing the right thing? Oh, this brand is doing this thing. I should run something like that too. But ultimately, this is where leading from your heart is super important. You have to be a practical business person for sure. But when you lead through your heart, with your heart, you will realize when to put your blinders on and when to sieve out the noise. It doesn't get easier. You just get better at sieving out what is noise versus what is good advice that you can take to execute. Because you're not trying to copy someone else. You're trying to build a business that is true to what your vision is. Unless you are out there to just copy and paste someone else's dreams, then make sure you finesse the ability to balance practical business logic and your vision. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think that's actually one good thing that is not just for women, right? But for any entrepreneur out there with any kind of challenge that they are facing, as long as you lead with your heart and as long as you know that what you're doing serves your target audience well, at the end of the day, that's all that matters, and that's all that should matter at the core of it, right? So Mardhiah, similarly, I know that obviously currently you don't have 19 ringgit membership prices anymore. So how was that, I guess, was there any reaction from the audience or your target audience when you, say, had price increments or when you introduced new offerings that were a bit more on the luxurious side of things? How do you balance that vision of this is what LAC stands for versus this is what the customer wants and what we have to some extent serve?
I guess it comes down to knowing your customer. So the avatar of your customer, you have to know it so well. I guess it's down to also brand positioning at the end of the day. There will always be cheaper offerings out there, but it's down to your market positioning and you have to stick by it. I think that it's very, very common for people to a competitor is reducing their price, so you're like, or not even your competitor, not even your direct competition. It's just like, any Tom, Dick and Harry just like reducing their prices and you get like, oh my God, you cannot. You have to know your customer and you have to know that that's what a market is. There's luxury, there's premium, there's, prestige, there's mass. And knowing where you are in that landscape is super, super important. So you don't get strayed by all these distractions. Like one day another player choose to do this type of pricing and then you're like, oh, I should do it too. So you eliminate that kind of FOMO factor. So I think knowing your customer well. Also, I do think that who you target when you start out versus who you target when you're growing could be different people. So, and that kind of trade-off, you have to balance as well. And I think what you have to realize is the compass, like your North Star, should always be your brand positioning and your ideal avatar. And once you have that, you don't get distracted, Don't get FOMO. So you just stay on the course. So I guess that's it. Of course, you have to make data-driven decisions also. If it sells well, you have to realize, maybe people see value in it, or the pricing or whatever. Like that's for you to decide. But there's also a lot of downsides to listening to customers. I think you have to be very selective, and at the end of the day, you welcome feedback, but you have to decide which feedback you want to listen to. And that is on you as an entrepreneur to know. So,
Yeah, 100% right. And there's this saying that I always follow, which is, if you're for everyone, you're for no one.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
For sure.
That's very, very strong. If you're for everyone, you're for no one, essentially. So it's almost like you're not serving who you intend to serve. There's no target audience, or there's no persona, as what Mardhiah mentioned. That's a very, very interesting quote as well. That's actually very, very moving. Now, from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of, so this particular, I guess, question or element of being swayed to make decisions that will benefit, quote unquote, everyone, or benefit your target audience, benefit you as a founder, as an entrepreneur, benefit your team. That seems like one of the many, many challenges that both of you would have to face as an entrepreneur, much less or much more, what more as a female entrepreneur. There's also recent stats where we hear a lot of female entrepreneurs being very risk averse because again, there's just this heightened sense of fear of failure, fear of not doing good enough, fear of what if I make the wrong decision. So a lot of women tend to be much more risk averse when it comes to making decisions in business. But at the same time, or in that same vein, a lot of women who do make such tough decisions actually end up making more decisions that will end up to be profitable for them and their businesses in the long run. So in that length or in that hand, I'd just like to ask both of you here, what's a smart or risky move that both of you have had to make over recent years since you started your businesses that turned out to be great, that turned out well, that turned out in your benefit, but it felt very risky at the time, very scary at the time? Just to share a little bit more about how you overcome that challenge as well, and yeah, and how it paid off in the end. Maybe Mardhiah, we can hear more from you first, yeah.
Every decision you make is a risk. So I do not know where to start with that question. So it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's a risk.
actually like starting a business, right? Hiring your first employee, opening a store. What else?
Every small decision is a risk, unfortunately.
Was there a specific decision that maybe felt unconventional or unpopular at the time that paid off? Unpopular is a very strong word, but unconventional sounds safer.
Oh, okay. I could think of one. When we first started out, there was always this question of like, should we start small? As in like, either way, we still have to open a brick and mortar location, right? We still have to open a store, but like, in terms of size, do we go small or do we go big? You know, what kind of services do we want to offer? And then we were like, the decision was, and the thought process was, we can make an impression if we're small. You know, so we were like, let's just go big, because not a lot of players are big enough in the market, right? Like they can't do, you know, X number of services. You know, they don't have, you know, that many therapists. Like it's always smaller locations, and yeah. So within a specific square footage. So we were like, if we are just a small outfit, we know that either we are small but we scale fast, right? So it's like, you know, your square footage is small, but like you tend to open like 4 outlets a year or something. That's in the pipeline. We didn't know what the pipeline was, so we were like, let's make an impression and just open big one. So that was gut feel purely. It wasn't based on like, you know, when we did the website, where we wanted to get prospective customers, we were like, oh, let's just put, you know, mani-pedis, massages, blah, 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 like, you know, just go crazy, right? But then, like, you know, obviously we were considering, you know, back and forth, like, oh, maybe not have it be a woman's only spa, you know, which thank God the decision was to stick to women's only spa. But, you know, for many reasons, including market differentiation, right? So, yeah, the decision was like, go big or go home, you know, we could make an impression, and we were right. That was a good bet. And it's a bet we are taking with this outlet as well. So this is even bigger. So it's true.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Women want multiple services under one roof. So these are the hypotheses that you need to make in business, and you have to validate them. So when we first started out, we listed down like all the possible hypotheses, right? Like we think that this is what the market wants. We think that this is what customers are going to pay. We think that these are the services, blah, 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 blah. So we had a list of like hypothesis that we were ready to validate. And I guess that's a good place to start also. And then you realize like, oh, you know, if I do this, you know, if I create a website, blah, 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 then I could kind of eliminate and answer some of these questions that you know, that I have about the business. So, yeah, I guess like that's like a very good place to start. Yeah, so safe to say that we're still doing what we first set out to do, and we're even expanding on that concept. So, but having said that, we're also always thinking like maybe we should do smaller outfits, you know. Now that we have two big ones, maybe what people want is smaller ones and have many of them. So, you know, these things kind of grow with you, and you're supposed to always ask the same questions, expecting different answers. So that's also true in business, right? Just ask the same questions, but in different angles. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, go big or go home. That is, I mean, unpopular again is a word that we use quite loosely here, but a very unconventional decision. I think a lot of people, myself included, when we saw Luxury was opening post-COVID lockdown, it was a fairly big outlet in Link KL in the heart of the city. The first thought that came to mind was, wow, this girl has guts. This founder, whoever she is, has guts to open in the middle of a pandemic. Now, before we go into our final few questions, I think we have a question from the floor right there, from this amazing lady here.
Thank you very much, ladies. Very happy to hear you guys eloquently explaining business to women. I have a question for both of you. Both of you mentioned just now that you use your own funds, right, to start up, right? At what point did you get additional funds, or did you not get additional funds to continue, right? And have you achieved ROI already? Return on investment. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that question. Perhaps, Eva, if you'd like to take that on first. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I started, I think actually for the longest time in my business, I kept it as self-funded up until I think when this store, the opportunity to take on this store happened. And I remember asking my husband, do you think I should take out my savings and open a store? And I think that was when he was like, don't be crazy. You need to be a smart businesswoman, right? And at that time, we were too small or too short of a time frame of being a business in order to get a bank loan. Because in order for you to get a bank loan, you need to be minimum 3 years, and we haven't hit 3 years yet. And we know VC funding is not an option. I also cracked my head and I'm like, okay, should I just take the risk? But that would be foolish, I think, for me at the very least at that point in time, thinking of like using my own money to roll, right? Because you have to balance business practicality with ambition. Because imagine this, if I were to pull out all my savings to start off something like this, you know, I would probably be really worried about putting food on the table. I would be really worried about, oh my God, am I making the right decision? I will be very emotionally like skewed. I'm not making the right business decision. And therefore, I actually then went out and like pitched for funding. From, like you say, friends and family, you know, people who would believe in your vision, people who had known me for many years. And that was actually where I decided that, okay, in order for me to start a sustainable, viable business, it is now the right time for me to get investment. Because you don't want to get an investment for 20,000 and then say, I'm going to get that 20,000 to do this and give away X amount of my company, right? That doesn't quite make a lot of business sense. So you need to kind of reassess, what do you need the funding for? How much do you need? Is it the right timing? And what are you going to use that money for? A lot of people try to raise funding to cover a bad decision. That is bad way of raising funds. That's the bad reason to raise funds, right? But if you're raising funds to then say, I'm gonna use these funds to create a channel that 3, 4x, 5x, 10x my business for growth purposes, that is when it's smart to go raise funds.
So for yourself, at which point did you decide that you'd reach out for external investment? After how many years?
So that was close to 3 years. So 2 years, 8 months-ish. I'm just going to be really honest. I was crying to my husband. And I cried a lot throughout this whole journey of starting my business. And I was crying to my husband and I said, why does it feel so hard, right? No matter how much money we make, it feels like I don't see the cash at all. And it's because we are a product-heavy business. And every time we grow, cash is involved.
Sure.
Because you want to grow through consignment, you need to buy more products, you need to pay your artisans money, and you want to pay fair wages, right? And you know that means paying salary. And as you grow, people are asking you, hey, do you do bespoke? I can't take bespoke from the coffee shop all the time, so I need to have a studio. Now we have 4 people, you know, some part-time, some full-time. Where am I going to house them? I can't house them in my house forever, right? So you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm pushing the limits on all the area that I'm functioning in, and I'm getting good feedback. Okay, people are buying at this price point, right? People keep coming back. What's my average order value? What's my average returning customer, right? All of these data kind of adds up, and you know that, okay, this is the time. Yeah. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, but I guess it depends on, you know, different people have different sort of what they can borrow from the bank. Whether it's a household income that is, you know, becomes a dependent piece of information that's used for that, or whether it's you yourself, whatever funds that, you know, that you have generated, right? So in terms of like the quantum of what you had asked, or rather you requested external funds from, what was the quantum like for your business, right? Like say if you spent 100,000 this year, so then after 3 years, then what was the quantum that you borrowed from the bank, the loan? If you understand what I mean.
Sorry, just to clarify, so is your
Yeah.
question what is the projected ROI or
Yeah, ROI was one. ROI is just a simple, straightforward question. After how many years do you achieve ROI, return in investment, return on investment, right? It means you see a profit. After what is that duration? I'm just curious. And the other is when you ask for loan, then what was that quantum against the value of your business? Like, is it 2 times, 3 times the value of your business, 4 times, 5 times?
Right. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Ladies, I'm not sure if that's PNC, if that's shareable, but yeah, leaving it to both of you. If it's PNC, that's totally fine.
So for us, we achieved ROI in the 2nd year of business. So, I mean, we were net positive 2nd year of business. But we reinvested it into opening more outlets. It's very capital intensive. So it's very hard for you to see the money until you scale to a certain level, right? So basic math is like, you know, you have your HQ costs, and then, you know, all your outlets will contribute to your HQ costs, right? So if you have one outlet, then there's only so much room for you to wiggle. You know, there's not a lot of wiggle room. So unfortunately, in our business, we have to grow to a certain degree so that we could pay ourselves a better wage also, you know, instead of like paying ourselves very minimally, things like that. So, I mean, there's cost to growth. So you should, you know, like you be profitable a bit, and then like you grow, and then you lose money and as you grow until you reach a point where you're profitable again. So we are at a point where we're losing money now because like we have to reinvest in new outlets and things like that.
Oh, it's all right. Yeah, if all's okay.
Yes. Yeah, sorry. I was just about to say reinvesting is for me, it's not a loss. It is rolling your money so that you can make more. Yeah, so good on you. Very happy to hear, because it's not easy to see or turn a profit enough for you to even roll it back, right? But I was just really curious because what you mentioned just now about taking loans, I think a lot of people, maybe especially women to a certain extent, bulk away from that because, you know, I don't want to hutang anybody, right? I don't want to be in debt, right? Even though it's for business, I think that's something that women struggle with. But it's more of who we are. Maybe, you know, you want everyone to be happy, and you know, so that we can move forward happy and such. It's just that it's not always as easy as it seems, and people need to understand at which point do I seek help, because yeah, a lot of people just say, I'll just use my own money, But not everyone is as lucky as, maybe you ladies are, to be able to turn a profit and continue that business and roll that money further, right? And it could be like you use your funds and you don't do well and you lose your funds. You lose your savings, right? So having gone through and having asked for external, that's why I'm sort of asking on behalf of everyone. At which point, after 2 years, then, or you mentioned after 3 years, right? Just a time frame so that people, okay, if I've been doing this after 2-3 years, maybe I should be asking for funds from a bank.
So maybe I can just share my thoughts
Sure,
on
go
that,
ahead.
right? I don't think there's a templated answer as to when you should go get fund. Just because, you might have asked for fund earlier, then, that's the right thing for me. I might have asked for funds just very recently, so I don't really know. I mean, of course, I have my projected ROI and everything, but you won't know because it's a projection, right? So I don't think there is a stock standard answer or a template that you would say like, oh, this is the right time for me to go raise funds. And I think the other thing as well to mention is there are actually a lot of, it's not called loans. It's not sponsorship either. Grants, yes. There are actually a lot of grants out there that could be your first point of option, right? Because they are there for a reason, and a lot of the grants are supporting Malaysian businesses. There are a lot of sustainable grants out there, female grants out there. So I think you need to be resourceful in terms of where you look for the money and what is the right timing, and also what is the right form of funding you're getting. So I think only you would know because you know your business the best.
Can I add to a very good point that you mentioned? I think women, primitively, we want to feel safe. I think that we always seek for safety, and we're sort of, wired that way, right? So that's why I get where you're coming from in that, women are always more risk averse, right? So, and I think that that is not necessarily a good thing. I think that if you look at the biggest companies in the world with a lot of cash, they still borrow money. Borrowing money is not about, it's not just about being in debt. It's about being able to serve, the loan, being able to pay back, right? You're only as good as your ability to pay. As long as you can pay back, then you're fine. It's a risk worth taking. But I guess we are sort of wired into thinking I don't want to take risks. I think taking loan is not really that risky. You get what I mean? If you're growing a business, then that's something that you have to do.
Yeah, and I think to your point as well, just that word risk scares a lot of women out there because risk is equated to bad, right? Whereas risk is something that maybe we have to reframe ourselves, not just as entrepreneurs, but as women in general, that risk is necessary for growth, no matter what that growth will look like within or beyond business. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I think also it's worth saying that there's a lot of pain involved in growth, a lot of pain involved in success. You have to be ready for that pain. If you want to keep playing it safe, you will be safe, but then probably the outcome is going to be safe also. So I think that these kind of things, I guess, as women, we need to be more open about, right? And I really like the questions because I get what you're saying is there needs to be a shift in that too, in terms of taking on risk.
Thank you for answering that question. You hit it spot on, right? Because it's just giving advice to the younger generation. I'm actually older than you guys, so I kind of know what you guys are talking about. But I want to simplify it for the younger ones, right? So they have to see that yes, and we're using very big words like risk averse. Women are risk averse. Number one, risk will always be there. If there's no risk, then what are you doing? What are you trying for? Number two, bad things will happen. It will. You just have to know how to manage it and you expect it and you know how to manage it. Number 3, I think if we all could be real with each other, tear down that mask of perfection and made up and proper everything, and be able to speak each other like real for real. I mean, I'm talking for you like real here, right? So that really helps as well, because you know, women, if they come together, regardless of what you do, I've seen it happen here as well. We're unstoppable because we can go into details, we can follow through, and we can drive strategy as well. I'm not saying men are not useful, but I'm saying women are just as good and can be even better. But just wanted to, you know, let the kids really see our real selves, right? Not like a put on like, yeah, of course, she's so pretty, she's so da-da. Let them see your real selves, and they will respond and really take it in. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to you as well. Thank you for the amazing questions that you shared. And your words really, really mean a lot. And it does bring us to our closing segment here. The message that we do have is that women, when we stand together, especially in such a cutthroat entrepreneurial market like what you both are in right now, women are unstoppable. To put it very, very simply, is what you've said. So I guess just to share one final closing remark from both of you. It's quite a loaded closing remark I'm going to put out there, because the closing remark that I do want to ask for you both to share is, I guess, what's one piece of advice that you would give your entrepreneurial self from 3.5, 4 years ago, maybe even older? Just to close off this discussion, maybe Eva, you'd like to give a start first?
I think having spent 3.5 years in entrepreneurship, I realized that it is not a marathon. Is it? It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Yeah. People always think that that's an end goal you're trying to chase, but what I realized in this 3.5 years is that it is a journey. You learn so much about yourself every single day, how you treat people around you, how you treat your customers, how you make decisions when you're stressed out, because you're stressed out a lot, right? And that is what you need to realize, that this whole entrepreneurship journey, it is a journey for you to learn about yourself, who you truly are. And unless you're, you know, prepared to put in the grit to really learn about yourself, you know, maybe sort of like think properly first. Because I won't say it's easy. I think it's actually probably one of the hardest things I've done. And I still think it's so hard every day, right? But what keeps you going is that you realize there's a lot of learnings that comes out of this whole journey. Yeah.
Wow, entrepreneurship is essentially a journey about you discovering or rediscovering yourself, really, as a person, as a woman, and as an entrepreneur, essentially. Mardhiah, what about you? What's one piece of advice you'd like to give, if you could turn back time, you'd like to give yourself day one, envisioning Lax Retreat? What would that be?
There's a lot of things that okay, I always say this. Even when you do something you love, and I love what I'm doing, there will always be things that you don't like, you know, about it. And those things that you don't like, if you don't face them, you know, like, if you don't face them, and you sweep it under the rug, it will come back and haunt you. So you have to face it. I think it's as basic as that, you know, like, I really don't like the finance side of things. You could only, you know, ignore it for so long until you finally have to, like, I gotta learn how to, you know,
Do my accounts.
Yes, do my accounts, read the P&Ls and things like that. So, I mean, I'm still struggling with that, you know, and but it's something that you just have to face, right? And there's so many of those kind of things that, like, in a big scale, small scale, everything, like, there's so many things that you're not gonna love about what you love. You still have to do it. You still have to show up, you know. And I think, like, not a lot of things surprise me. When I guess because I didn't have expectations also, I came into it very hungry and very foolish. So there was not a lot of things that like surprised me. I was like, oh, and you know, I was very grateful that I was foolish also. Had I known everything that I know now, I probably wouldn't have done it. So, in a way, it's great. It's great to be foolish, you know. It's great to take risks. It's, you gotta be a daredevil, right? Because it's crazy. Entrepreneurship is crazy. It's not for everyone. So yeah, and I think that like right now my focus is like, okay, how do we survive the first 5 years? You know, because most businesses fail after 5 years, and you know, so things like that. I guess yeah. So you just have to face it head on, and
Solve problems every day.
yes, firefighting every day.
Firefighting, and as I guess that famous Nike slogan, just do it. Just face it, just do it then. Thank you so much, ladies. And with that, we wrap up our session for She Means Business. Can we give a round of applause to these two amazing panelists here?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eva. Thank you so much, Mardhiah. Now, as we close this, thank you so much for sharing very, very candidly and very honestly as well about your journeys from 3.5 or 4 years ago to where you are now. Ladies, again, just want to remind all of you here on the floor today that both of these outlets and both of these businesses are actually available here in KLGCC Mall. So whether or not they're open, I believe Flax will be open officially in a few weeks or so. Yes, so please go and support them. You can check out Inari Jewellery right after this. And just remember, especially as women, the title She Means Business is not just about having more women in the entrepreneurship space. It's actually more so about having that profound impact when we have more successful, more inspiring, more courageous women taking up spaces that would have been unheard of or untaken of prior. And I think these ladies, these two ladies here, are an epitome of what true courage means, in which courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means shaking, shivering, maybe going to therapy for a year, maybe going through a lot of losses and cries and doing things that you don't love, but still doing it and facing it head on anyway. So thank you to you both for showing us what true courage and entrepreneurship really, really means. Thank you so much, ladies, and thank you so much to everyone on the floor. We hope all of you have an amazing, amazing weekend ahead. Thank you. Thank you.
The world's unfolding, stories untold. Voices rising and we're breaking the mold. Fearless and bold, we're taking the lead.